start our keynote session, I was just looking at all these speakers, and coming up on the holidays, these are 4 brands, not just 3 brands, 4 brands that are iconic here. And FedEx is going to be delivering them all to your home during Christmas and Hanukkah. We got the Journal, we got Hasbro, we have Tapestry, so your Coach and Kate Spade luxury items, and FedEx. I'm super excited. Come on up, Walden. I'd just love for you to join us for our keynote session, How to Lead, Structure, and Manage Change. Thank you, everyone.
So much. Thank you, Jeremy. It's great to be here again. I hope you all are enjoying your lunch. Quick thank you to MIT, all the organizers, Joseph Fakau and Beth Kurtz as well for organizing this lunch panel. I'm very excited to moderate again this 2025 MIT Sloan CFO Summit. We have a terrific panel. We'll here discuss how to lead, structure, and manage change, which is something I know everyone in this room knows about. In today's economy, the role of the CFO has changed dramatically and expanded dramatically. You're no longer just the stewards of the balance sheet. You're leading through constant transformation across every front. My goal today is to get these 3 leaders to discuss 4 themes. 1, how they manage organizational change within their company and within the finance group. 2nd, how they navigate external and competitive pressures. And then tied to that is a third theme, how they navigate black swan events, something I know you're all familiar with on a daily and weekly basis, whether that's managing trade and tariff policy or the pandemic. Finally, I want to touch upon the human aspect of being a CFO. How do CFOs build that inner strength to do your job day in, day out? How do you balance the personal, family, and business priorities? So I think this is something that's really important in this age of AI. I know there's been some really just terrific conversation around AI and hyper-efficiency and productivity. So how do you balance some of the human aspects of that? So as I mentioned, we have the leaders of FedEx, Tapestry, and Hasbro to my right. John Diedrich, CFO of FedEx, Gina Getter, CFO and COO of Hasbro, and Scott Rowe, the CFO and COO of Tapestry. I'd like each of you just to quickly just introduce yourself quickly and maybe give this room a quick tip on how you mentally and physically prepare for your job each day. We'll start with John.
Yeah, so thank you, Walden. And first and foremost, I want to thank my colleagues here on the panel and their great companies for being great customers of FedEx. And to Jeremy's point, we are committed to getting, I appreciate the plug, Jeremy. We're committed to getting all your packages there on time this holiday season. Just by way of brief background, I had kind of a unique path to the CFO role. I started my career in the airline business at United Airlines as a lawyer. Then took a job as a lawyer at an air cargo company called Atlas Air Worldwide and kind of worked my way up through the organization there. Went to general counsel, got the opportunity to participate on the business side, became COO at Atlas Air Worldwide, and then eventually CEO. We sold the company to private equity, which is right about that time I got the call from FedEx to join as CFO. So here I am 2.5 years later at FedEx. Delighted to be here, and just pivoting to your question on how we mentally and physically prepare for the job. I'll start with the physical aspect. Throughout my life, career, tried to stay pretty active, enjoy sports, all kinds of sports, golf, particularly skiing, and whatever else comes my way to stay physically active. But from a professional standpoint, what I've learned over time is really the need to know where your strengths are. Some people like to work out early in the morning and do their work late at night. For myself, I'm the exact opposite of that. I like to work early in the morning when I'm freshest and then take on the workouts later in the evening. So just kind of a high level, probably not too different from many of you. But I've learned I'm more effective, physically in the morning. And then mentally, as you approach the job, and I couldn't help but be affected by, was it Professor Repenning's comments that you can get boiled down in the minutia of the day-to-day. And so what I start my day is taking as much news as I can, the news of the day, and sift through how much is reality and how much is slant, But taking in the news is important, and then I pivot from there to go through my schedule for the day. What are the meetings I have? What are the priorities? While trying not to get caught up too much in the day-to-day minutia and keeping the eye on the prize of our long-term objectives, our long-term priorities. And that's what's really important, so you don't find yourself, as Professor Repenning said, at the end of the day, that where you got nothing done on your to-do list, or you didn't advance the ball on your long-term strategy. So that's just kind of my perspective, both physically and mentally.
So you start off the work, you read into your day, and you're not one of the 5 a.m. club doing...
I will do that occasionally, but it's not my preference.
Okay,
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Fantastic. Hi, I'm Gina Getter. Lovely to be with all of you today. I'm a bit of background. I grew up actually in food and CPG, so I spent about 20 years of my career at General Mills. I did a short little stint at Tyson Foods before becoming the CFO at Harley-Davidson. So spent about 3 years at Harley before making kind of the jump to smaller toys and games at Hasbro. So I've been in the seat at Hasbro as both the CFO and COO for about 2.5 years now as well. In terms of how I prepare, both kind of for the mental and physical aspects of the job, we were talking before as we were prepping, like as a public company CFO, you kind of mark your time in terms of how many earnings cycles you've been through. So I think I've been through, call it 24 or 25 earnings cycles. But with that comes seasoning, an immense amount of seasoning. And so I have learned that coming into the day with the mindset of news is news. And there's no such thing as good news or bad news. In fact, most CFOs will tell you the majority of the news that they get would probably fall in the bad news category. And so what I've learned is that if you approach the day as news is news and keep the focus on the problem at hand and your role as a leader or as a finance professional to solve that problem, not only are you going to be more mentally healthy, but your teams will as well. So I really make it a point for my team, news is news, come into my office, now let's solve the problems and kind of keep the business moving forward. I think being active is a huge part of being fit for the role. I am a runner, I am a part of the 5 a.m. club. Sometimes when I'm not with my family, I'm a 5 a.m.er and a 5 p.m.er, like I do both ends of the spectrum, but I have found that if I am not healthy and active, my work starts to suffer. So it is something that I prioritize as well.
Great, thank you.
Great. Hi, guys. Scott Rowe, CFO and COO of Tapestry, which you may not know Tapestry, but I hope you know our brands, Coach and Kate Spade. My career, I started out, as probably many in this room, on a CPA track, Ernst & Young, did that for a number of years, and my early career was in what I would say heavy industry, so a lot of that time with a division, what became Alcoa, OEM Automotive, and then made the big jump into consumer products. And I spent a lot of time at VF Corporation. I really wanted to make that jump because while I love the supply chain and I love a lot of the things that go with those slow cycle businesses and huge investments in ROI, I really wanted products that I could relate to and also that, that had the marketing and the consumer side to them. So VF Corporation, Vans, North Face, Timberland, et cetera. Progressed through a number of jobs there and ultimately was the CFO for about 6 years. And then I've been at Tapestry about 4.5, where I'm the COO and now COO, like Gina. So Gina, I was thinking, we got John here too. We can negotiate a better rate.
I feel like we can team up. The volume between the two of us is pretty.
It's right
gets
now,
the scale.
right? We're right on the cusp. We're right on the cusp. So a couple things come to mind, Walden, when I think about prepping for the day. So one of my mentors said early on, gave me 2 pieces of advice that I truly think about. One of those is what's different because I'm here today. And it's so easy to do a lot of things. But what are you really accomplishing and what moves you forward as an organization towards the goals that you have, whatever those may be? And I feel like our roles collectively is, a lot of that role is around focusing the organization on the things that matter most and the things that move the needle, if you will. The other thing is, I remember we were having a particular, I'm sure my colleagues can relate to this, we were having a particularly bad quarter, and
That never happens.
in the division that I'm in, and I, this is also personal advice to the younger people in the crowd. I was taking it all on my shoulders, like, oh my God, and I'd kind of, I was walking around moping, and my boss at the time, like, physically grabbed me and said, pushed me in an office and said, "What are you doing?" I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "You look like your dog just died. You got this look on your face. Everybody in this organization knows you know more than they do about the condition of the business, and when you're worried, they're worried. So you better get over yourself, get out there and motivate people and get them organized, or get them, encouraged about what they can do to change the outcome." And I try to think of those two things just as I show up every day. Oh, what do I do? So my happy place is the mountains. I spend, like was said earlier, I'm a skier. Fly fishing is one of my passions, and we have a small ranch. I always say there's ranches and ranches. We have one of these little ones. But it's around fly fishing, and that's my happy place, because there's few places in life where you can really dissolve from the world. And if you're on the river, the water's moving, it can be dangerous. You got to pay attention. You got to figure out what bugs are hatching, how you're going to find the right one, and then importantly, you got to execute. And what I find is all of a sudden 4 hours are gone, and I've spent this time in a wonderful Zen moment. And whatever your version of that is, I would just encourage you to find places where you totally get away from the day-to-day, because these jobs take a pound of flesh. They will grind you up if you don't find ways to find some balance in your life.
So you both also have two jobs. You're both COO and CFO. I was curious if you could talk a little bit about how you manage that. Papa John's just elevated their CFO yesterday to a similar role, so I sense a trend here. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
I don't know if it's a trend. I think it's more just how the company is organized. And some of it, I think, is just personal, right? And in my case, I've had a lot of experience in supply chain and technology, digital. So when the current COO retired, it was a natural, who happened to be a 2 decades long friend of mine and colleague, and the reason I'm at Tapestry. But so it was a natural progression for me to take on that role. I get the question a lot, Walden, like, so you got all this more responsibility, what do you do? Well, you have to have really strong people, and you've got to learn to delegate, right? And one of the hardest things that I've had to learn as I became a C-suite executive, again, a mentor told me this, this is the hardest part, Scott. You know the answer, don't give it, right? You got to develop people and let them run and create those parameters and give good direction, of course, and be a coach. But the more responsibility you have, the more you have to rely on good people, and the quicker you have to make hard choices on making sure you have the right team.
And you evolved in that role, right? As opposed to Gina, you just came in right.
I came right, yeah. I came into it, and just to your point of like we have 2 jobs, or I have 2 jobs. I actually don't see it as 2 separate. There's very fefew days where I'm like, I'm going to go into this meeting and be the COO, and now tomorrow I'm going to be the CFO. It is a very much a blended role. And to your point, it was scoped that way from the get-go. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I chose to leave Harley, was because I'd never seen a job out of the gates combine both the financial side and the operations side. And for ops, for us, that includes all of supply chain, all of technology, and all of analytics are kind of the COO elements of my role. In growing up at General Mills, it was very much expected as a finance person, you were the financial operator of the business. You were the right hand of the president or the business leader or the function leader. So we kind of naturally served as that COO type position without it being the title. So coming and stepping into Hasbro, it felt very natural. And to your point on circumstance, my boss was a new CEO when he hired me. He came up through gaming and did not have the CPG background. And so he recognized that pretty early as he was building out his management team, bringing leaders around the table that had differential and additive skill sets to him. And so he and I are actually an incredible pairing, because he has a very creative innovative mind when it comes to gaming and all things that you would expect out of a company like Hasbro. And then I bring the operational rigor that was ingrained in me 20 years at General Mills. So I do think it's a bit circumstantial of what you go into, but there's really no decision operationally that doesn't end up in a financial statement somewhere. So I have found the two roles to kind of really blend seamlessly. And I agree with your point on people. Like my leaders, my chief supply chain officer, she's phenomenal. And there's very little day-to-day oversight that I have to have for her, the same of all of my direct reports. So getting that team around you that can really lead allows you to really elevate and, to your point, make the fast, big decisions when needed, but not have to micromanage the day-to-day.
Great.
Walden, can I just make a quick build on that too? Because I think one of the things that I've learned over time is what I'm not good at. And so as you think about building that team around you, we tend to think of talent as either good or bad. And the reality is everybody's good at certain things and not as good at other things. So finding what your weaknesses are and admitting that, and finding really strong number twos that can prop you up in those areas, and likewise where you need to step forward maybe more than the job title would necessarily dictate because of the dynamics of the team. I think that's a really important factor in a successful team.
Right. We'll talk about talent and AI later, but John, I want to ask you about the topic of organizational change. FedEx is undergoing three major changes concurrently right now: your Drive initiative, the LTL spinoff, and your fiscal calendar realignment. Can you walk us through that a little bit?
Sure. Really exciting times at FedEx. And when we talk about transformation, I would start by saying that all these transformational initiatives are really geared towards becoming more efficient, improving the customer experience, as well as value creation. So, starting with the top, you mentioned Drive. And when I think about Drive with FedEx, there's really a couple of major initiatives within that, which includes our One FedEx initiative and what we call Network 2.0. And I will tell you, a lot of these transformational initiatives we have going on is what excited me about coming to FedEx and where we are in our evolution. Having served FedEx for a number of years in my prior company, I had no idea how really separate those companies were. You had FedEx Express, you had FedEx Ground, and you had FedEx Freight. And bringing the two largest of those, the FedEx Ground and FedEx Express, together is really what we're talking about when I say One FedEx and Network 2.0. So through that, it's designed, again, to allow us to be more efficient. One truck instead of two trucks, one truck in the neighborhood instead of two, bringing our operations and our people together. So a lot of management and project management that's going into that piece of the transformation. We're excited. We're well on our way. Roughly 20% of our volume now passes through what I'll describe as Network 2.0 transformed facilities. So more to come. We expect to finish that. It's towards the end of fiscal year 27. So that's very exciting. Drive really runs through all that. And what Drive is, it's not an acronym that means anything. It just was driven from Drive results, right? And Network 2.0 is designed to do that, Drive results. With regard to the second large initiative of the three companies I mentioned, Express, Ground, there was our freight business, or oftentimes called LTL, less than truckload business, which is a great business. It's a higher margin business for us, but we really weren't getting the valuation. The multiple wasn't enjoying what the rest of the LTL market was enjoying within the FedEx portfolio, among other things. So we made the decision to spin off that company. We're in the midst of that now. The project plans are on track. We expect to complete that spin. It's roughly a $10 billion revenue company by the end of May, June 1st of 2026. Again, a lot of project plans involved in that, a lot of cultural management issues with personnel, who stays, who goes, and so forth. So, a lot that goes into that. And then finally, part and parcel of all of that together is pivoting our current reporting fiscal year to a calendar year. Currently, we're in a mid-year fiscal year. And I'm told that originated from when our founder, Fred Smith, started the company, that back in the early 70s, you could get cheaper audit fees when you did it mid-year, right? I don't think that's the case any longer.
That's amazing.
But for our purposes, it's been something I've had my eye on since we started the company with freight and our express business now moving forward post-spin. It was really a great opportunity for us to bring the fiscal year to a calendar year. There's a lot of goodness for us in that from a business standpoint. It puts us on comp with our peers, our largest peers, UPS obviously, in the calendar fiscal year, and makes all of our jobs a little easier, those who follow the industry. There was also some internal cultural benefits to doing it as well. When you look at year-end close from a May 31st fiscal year end, you're doing a lot of that close heavy lifting in June and July when you have a lot of your young families, your young talent who want to be off, their kids just get off school and want to go on vacation. Wouldn't we rather be having them do that from a recruiting retention standpoint in January and February? So there's some added internal cultural goodness. So those are really some of the initiatives we have going on. I would say, to how we all manage our business when you're looking at significant transformation, project planning is key. The cultural issues, the employee issues are top priority, making sure you're staying in touch with the organization, how they're doing, getting them the resources they need. I couldn't agree with you more, Scott, on what you said earlier about making sure you've got the right areas and support where you may not be expert. Some of these areas, you may or may not do this all the time. And when you're looking at a spin, it's not something we do every day. So we bring in the right resources, both internally and externally. So those are some of the transformational initiatives we have going on.
That's interesting, because there's a lot of pragmatic reasons for the calendar change,
Yeah.
besides typically you think about the financial aspects of it.
Right.
Gina, I wanted to ask you about the transformation at Hasbro. You've gone through quite a transformation in the past few years, from a toy company to what you call a play company. Walk us through that. What does that mean for the larger organization and also for the finance department?
Finance function. Yeah, so Hasbro, I'm sure when you saw Hasbro behind my name, everyone immediately goes to toy company. And we've got a laundry list of brands that I'm sure you all grew up with, and if you have kids that your kids are growing up with, everyone goes to, we are a toy company. And actually, we're probably midway through our transformation to what we're saying. We are a play company. And our two superpowers are play and partnership. And as we shift to a play company, actually our gaming business, so that's Magic the Gathering, it's all of the work that we're doing with digital video games, that is actually the growth engine for the company on both top and bottom line. And then our second big superpower or kind of revenue stream is in licensing in all of our IP. So we're shifting from, you're just a toy company, to we have toys, but we're really about our games and we're really about licensing and IP. And as we've moved that, Hasbro's been a 100-year plus company. So as we've moved, we've had to change everything from how we're structured, who's sitting around the table, to what our portfolio looks like, how we're funding the portfolio and capital allocation shifts that are underlying, to ultimately how we're running and operating the company. Even simple nuances from my first earnings call to the one we just did, I would say my first earnings call, 75% of my narrative was on toy. And now this last one, if you read, there's a couple paragraphs on toys, but we start by talking about our big engines that we have in gaming and in IP and licensing. So we've really been shifting the business model and shifting how the world sees Hasbro. And with that, for finance, when I stepped into the role 2.5 years ago, I had a really good team, but there was a lot of accountants. And not that accounting, you need accountants. I love accountants. I am not an accountant. And so I have some of my best hires are around my accounting organization. But when you talk about the business shifts or think about everything that needs to happen to make this shift for Hasbro, you need operators. You need financial operators. And so what we did is we split the finance function, and we said there's individuals that have to play in the corporate finance world. You need accounting, you need treasury, you need tax. Those are functions, audit, that need to live and are an important part of the finance ecosystem. But we also need finance business partners, those that are sitting next to the business, helping see around corners, Helping co-pilot is a word that I use a lot, all of the big decisions that need to be made as we make this shift. And those are two separate groups that are sitting within finance and accounting. And so we've had to go through some tough changes from a people side. We've also had to invest a ton on development and resetting expectations of this is what it looks like to be a finance operator. We actually don't use the word FP&A in our company. I know that probably everybody uses FP&A. When I got to Hasbro, like everybody, it was like the buzzword. They were all very excited to tell me we had FP&A. I'm like, no, you have accounting, and now we're going to go build financial operations. So we're probably 2.5 years into that change, and you can see in the decisions, in the meetings, in the discussions, and most importantly, in the business impact that we're making, finance's role and influence is just threaded throughout.
And how are you investing in technology? And I know there's been a lot of discussion about AI. So how do you think about AI, and how are you applying that to throughout the company? If you can give us a few examples.
How much more time do we have left?
We don't have. Maybe this could overtake the whole conversation. Some quick comments.
Yeah, I would say AI. We are still on the early days. I think everyone is on the early days of truly absorbing what it can do for us. Hasbro, we are leaning into AI and embracing it. And my boss and I and the rest of our management team are really encouraging the use of AI day to day. Now, we're pretty specific. We are a creative company. Anything that deals with artistry or the creative process, that is protected from AI. But every other component of how we run the company, we are trying to be AI first. We have done a pretty good job this year of making sure that the basic tools, Copilot, chat, are kind of an employee's first kind of course of action. We are now getting more mature on leveraging AI in the core underpinnings of how we run the company. And probably the simplest one to talk about is demand planning. I mean, I'm sure many in the room do forecasting and demand planning. At Hasbro, it used to be a lot of humans and a lot of spreadsheets. We now have morphed that to be almost entirely AI-driven with a little bit of human intervention at the end. And so we're allowing all of that mundane work, that non-value-added work. How do you leverage the power of AI to do that so that you can unleash the human potential on really the higher value-added impacts for the business?
And then Scott, what about you? How are you incorporating AI into your workflow? You said earlier in our planning calls that it's a big enabler, but it creates a lot of angst and concern. So how are you managing all that angst?
Yeah, well, do I get to talk about transformation too? Because I think we're all in constant transformation.
Yeah.
I was sitting listening to my colleagues talk about the things going on in their business, and I'm thinking, well, I can think of like 3-4 major transformational things that are going on in our company: portfolio change, turnarounds of businesses, but probably the biggest is AI. And it's really interesting, and it's on multiple facets. So one is the individual. Mm-hmm. So we are thinking about how do we enable, and trust and enablement are two words that come up because we also probably all have fiduciary roles, and whether it's cyber or PII or data privacy, those kind of things. How do you create an environment where people can go nuts without them going nuts? So, right, create a box where they can play and it's safe, and there are ways to do that, but it's a challenge. And so we're trying to enable and inspire our people to be able to be more productive in their day-to-day job. So that's one aspect. And a second one is around how is AI enabling our strategies? I like to think of that as the vertical. Because we're trying to do certain things as a company, and there are ways we can accelerate or augment or get there faster. But probably the biggest transformation, Walden, for us is the consumer. And so we're a consumer business, and we interact daily. We're 90% direct to consumer between our digital presence and our physical stores. And the ways in which people are interacting with brands is changing rapidly. And there's some tactical things, SEO going to AEO, right? And the way that an agent views your business is very different than the way a human does. And what does that mean, and what are the implications to that? So as I think about, we're focused, our center of the bullseye is Gen Z consumer. Gen Alpha is coming right behind them. They're going to grow up in a world where they know nothing but agentic search and AI world. And what are the implications for us? So as we think about transforming the organization, there's the technical side is kind of becoming commoditized, at least for us. I know there's companies that have a whole industry, but the tools are there and they're getting better every day. The bigger challenge for us is the human side. There's fear. Every day there's a new article about dislocations, and people are reading things about, oh, we're not hiring kids out of college and blah, blah, blah. A lot of it, I think, is misinformation, but still it's creating fear in the organization. So the balance and the challenge for us as leaders is how do we enable and encourage people to move on this journey? And again, we're kind of doing that through empowerment, inspiration, and giving them the tools, but they got to opt in, because the best inoculation for this scary future is to embrace and to become proficient and learn how you can become more effective at your job by augmenting yourself with the capabilities of AI. But I'd be misstating it if I said we've figured it out or that we've got all the answers. It's evolving very quickly.
How are you using it in the, I think you mentioned, how are you using the IR function? I think you used the phrase that it could be like a dying art, perhaps, because of AI.
Oh, no, we said we wouldn't say that on the public. No, I think the IR, and I just spent a day and a half marketing. I've been with our largest investors here in Boston, and it is changing for sure. I think there's always a human in the loop, right? Maybe there's a day, I don't know. But I think that what the humans bring to this process is extremely valuable. It's the creative side. And I think that will be really important. But a lot of what analysts used to do now can be done in an automated fashion. So what do? We take everything that we create and we run it through various AI models and say, okay, we thought we were saying this. What came out, right? What did it pick up? Are we seeing different things? Do we need to nuance here or there? So right now, at our stage of evolution, we're using it to augment our creation of materials, but and also to look at from the outside in, what are we saying what we thought we said that the machines are picking up?
The tone, like for earnings calls, how much feedback do you guys get on your tone? They sounded happy. They sounded upbeat.
Oh, they sounded confident.
So that's where we've found the AI to help, is we'll feed it in and be like, are we happy here? Are we grumpy here? What does this sound like? Because there's so much, the market sentiment just picks up on how you say things and the nuances of words. Like you can do word cloud, clouds of coming out of, like, to your point of what did we think we said, what did they actually hear? So it's helping you get smarter on how you message.
One other build on that, I don't know if you all are experiencing this, but increasingly too, analysts, buy side, whether it's fast money, whatever, hedge funds, there's so much data available. And so we're constantly fighting hallucinations, right? Data that has somewhere they got data that we never guided to, that never was part of our discussion, and yet it's moving the stock price, and people are making decisions based on that. So now, you've got this another set of inputs that is increasingly being used by the investment community. So interesting times. Mm-hmm. We try not to spend much time on it, actually, because you just got to run your game plan. Noise is noise, and in the end, it matters what you did and what you delivered. And if you're going to have some noise intra-quarter, so be it, right? Yeah. I mean, you can't chase those rabbits.
So I want to get to external pressures in the holiday season, but any quick thoughts on AI?
I echo just about everything that was said here. I think an important element, too, for large organizations is the governance and how you're using AI. Mm-hmm. I think it's critical. Start with use cases where you can understand what you're trying to achieve, what the outputs are, and who has access, who doesn't have access, and how much reliance you're going to put on. All those things go into governance, which I think is a key element on the trustworthiness of it as we go forward. But it's coming, it's here, and it's going to play a role in all of our businesses in so many ways. In the finance function as well, we're already using it in many respects. So, part of FedEx's foundational principles are about leveraging our digital capabilities. We've always been on the front end of technology, and AI is no different for us.
So next week is Thanksgiving. We're heading into this busy holiday season, which is very important to all three of your companies. We start with you, John. What are the biggest headwinds you're facing? What's on your radar right now in terms of heading into this very important period?
Sure. So I'll start by saying we're ready for peak season. We're excited about it. Look forward to getting all your packages and gifts there on time for Hanukkah and for Christmas. And frankly, our peak season planning starts as soon as the prior peak season ends. Maybe you get a little break for New Year's, but it starts right away. So we take it very seriously, and we're excited about this particular peak. On the macro side, this time of year, weather is a role, and getting into technology and weather, we invest significantly, have, in my view, the state-of-the-art and top-of-the-line weather forecasting capabilities, as well as our ability to manage our traffic flows of our packages to minimize our disruptions. In the short time I've been with the company, we've been able to compress when we have weather disruptions. For example, at our Memphis hub, we've improved our efficiency significantly. So it's a constant focus. Also on the macro side, that we touched a little bit on when you wake up in the morning, the news, the geopolitical environment, what's changed and how are we adapting. It's another area where I think all of our companies have significant strengths in how we adapt. We have a very large global network, as I think you all know. We serve over 200 countries and territories, and do so every day. So we're adaptable to where the demand environment takes us. And keeping our head down and focusing on those things within our control. When the external circumstances are outside your control, what can we control? And we spend a lot of time planning and executing, particularly this time of year.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you're ready. I might have some last-minute shifts
Yeah,
that we need to go. I think for Hasbro, 2/3 of our toy volume comes in the last quarter of the year. So that's a pretty hefty chunk of change that is dependent on how the consumer is going to show up at the holiday. So I think there's it's the point of news, any article of is the consumer healthy or not. Walmart and Target reported this week, and they both kind of said everyone's cautiously optimistic that the consumer is going to stay healthy as we move through. What I know after living at Hasbro, this will be my third Christmas, is Christmas happens, Hanukkah happens, gifts happen, and there's usually toys underneath the tree. So we know that even though the consumer gets pinched, toy and the toy category is one that tends to be resilient, especially in November and December. But we are watching and being mindful as that consumer bifurcates between those that are untouched by any of the noise that's going on and they're continuing to spend at abandon, and those that are really impacted by what is happening to their day-to-day paychecks. They're very, very focused on that $20 or less item. So we're very cautiously optimistic. So far, so good with our holiday season, but there's still much to play out.
Any interesting consumer trends you can share with us? Any metrics? I know our hot toys, was it K-pop Demon Hunters or Magic the Gathering?
Yeah, you asked me about that last time. K-pop is coming, but we just can't get it out fast enough. No, the big one that we're excited about is Play-Doh Barbie is launching, or has launched, but it's, and for those that know, Barbie is Mattel. So it's a very interesting collaboration where you got the two big toy giants collaborating together on what is going to be a pretty big item at the holidays. So that would be one that we're excited about.
Okay. And Scott, I know you focus a lot about the speed and just different metrics in terms of the consumer evolution. What are you seeing from your perch?
As it relates to holiday specifically, I mean, we feel good coming in. We just doubled our growth rate. The quarter just reported 16%. And we're having a bit of momentum right now. So as I look at holiday, I don't know what the consumer is going to do. I'll let other people worry about that, right? As it relates to our consumers, They seem to be resonating with the product that we have. We spend a lot of time preparing for holiday. We call it our Super Bowl. I've just been in retail. We've been in our operations centers. We bring vendors in, all our key vendors, AWS, the big Salesforce, et cetera. We have them all ready because we double our volume during this short period of time in terms of transaction volume and websites and whatnot. So we want to make sure nothing goes down, that we don't disappoint our consumers, because the worst thing you can do is get somebody excited. They want to come in, they want to buy that brand new Brooklyn bag or the Duo bag, which are available at a retail outlet near you, and then not deliver, right? So we don't want to disappoint. So we have great partners in FedEx, and appreciate the reduction you're about to give us too. But no, we feel good. We've got momentum going in, and we see the consumer, at least in our world, being pretty healthy.
I want to switch to black swans. That's something that it seems to be happening more and more these days. The biggest global event obviously was COVID. Maybe you could talk about some lessons learned during COVID in terms of the supply chain issue at FedEx, and we'll go down the line.
Sure. From my perspective, there's not any one single black swan. We seem to be incurring black swans on a more regular basis, COVID being one example. And then you have the war that's over in Ukraine and so forth. And as a global company, we're following everything that's happening in the global community. And what I can tell you is we focus on being as adaptable as possible and making sure that we support our customers. When we have this, we work with our customers to ensure the customer experience is what it needs to be, and that we're delivering for our customers. What you're finding now too, and I think this is important, the supply chain is a term that you never heard in the boardroom 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And now it's paramount. When you hear about all the disruptions and where companies may be challenged or struggling, the word you usually hear is the supply chain is not delivering for us. And so from our standpoint, we take it very seriously. We're focused on playing our role in the supply chain and working closely with our customers. And I'll just share one little story. I mentioned I was a lawyer in a prior life, and as a young lawyer, I used to negotiate these force majeure clauses in these contracts and all these parade of horribles, war, civil unrest, natural disasters, and so forth, acts of God. And the one thing I was sure that was never going to happen was a global pandemic when I negotiated those. My point is, we should expect anything and everything's going to happen and plan for it and have contingency planning. And pretty much everything in a force majeure clause, I challenge you to look at one. Pretty much everything's happened in the span of the last 25 to 30 years.
So when I think of black swans, I think also of tariffs. Like we had Liberation Day back in April, I think,
April
right?
2nd,
And
to be
I think,
specific, yes.
and then when we met for the first time, I think there were all these changes. How do you think about tariffs as a black swan, and how does it affect your day-to-day?
I agree with what is a black swan event at this point. I mean, my first CFO role, it was the height of COVID. Harley manufacturers in the U.S., all of the parts came from China, supply chain. It taught me that you have to have lots of scenarios, you have to be super agile, and you can't get paralyzed by analysis paralysis, because that just kind of freezes the company. And so those have been lessons that we've brought with us into the situation here with tariffs. It's kind of the same principles. One of the biggest lessons that Hasbro learned, I'm sure many companies learned this lesson, was on inventory and not getting out. With COVID, you couldn't buy enough toys and games, and then all of a sudden everyone went back to work, and guess what? You could buy enough toys and games. And so we had an inventory situation that we had to work ourselves out of. So with tariffs, we were able to take the learning that we had of COVID and that playbook into how we're managing our day-to-day decision-making on the tariff environment. We're also taking it into supply chain. The disproportionate amount of toys are manufactured in China, so we have had to move very fast to diversify our footprint so that we still will always produce some in China. You just can't get away from China production, just given where the toy epicenters are. But we are moving very fast to not only diversify in the region, but bring product back into, onshoring it back into the US. So we try to operate with a no regret decision mentality. So we keep moving the business forward, and we're gonna make calls not because of the event or the tweet that we got in the morning, or what is being posted in the Wall Street Journal. We're going to make the best calls for the business, near term and long term. That's how.
And if I could, as another plug for FedEx, we're everywhere where you may migrate to, so we can handle those volumes. So.
Fantastic.
Now, Scott, how do you think about pivoting when you have? I know you always have plan A, B's, and C's, but what happens when you have to go to plan Z? Any recent examples of that?
Let's hope we don't get to Z. I smiled, Gina, when you said no regret action, because that's a terminology in a way that we think a lot. And I think having principles, the old BCP, business continuity planning and all that, you tried to run all these scenarios. And there are certain scenarios that you should run, but the reality is you actually can't predict what's going to happen. The only thing I know for sure is that you can't predict it. But you can say, okay, what are the most important aspects of our business? How do we remain liquid? I mean, we're CFOs, right? We better, what if something really bad happens geopolitically and we have to think about trapped cash, and could we make our dividend payment? And so you got to run all those scenarios. But I think the no regret action concept is a good one, in having principles, because the principles apply universally. And so when you might not know exactly what's coming, there are certain things that you know. Keep the people safe. Do we have an inventory of everybody? Do we know how to evacuate if we should have an issue? I mean, these are the kind of things that we think through. And the other thing I would say on this, Walden, is increasingly, and I'll put my supply chain hat on here more, our conversations have evolved, because we used to just try to think about efficiency and cost, and all those things, of course, are still important. But more and more, we're talking about agility and the ability to pivot. And in technology, right? Who's good today might not be good 3 years from now. And these multi-year agreements that we've had to unwind over time, you kind of learn. After a few of those, you learn, right? That, okay, let's stay agile. Let's have the ability to pivot quickly throughout our supply chain, throughout technology stack, throughout the business, knowing that for sure we're going to get inputs and changes that are going to likely be significant. And what is our ability then to move? And also, I would say, as CFOs, how do you get as variable of a cost structure as you can, which allows you then to navigate your way and not have a gun to your head with this massive cost structure, fixed cost structure that's really limits your ability to maneuver and gives you a lot less optionality.
So I want to leave time for questions. So if anyone has any questions, I want to leave about 5-10 minutes at the end. But I want to switch to how you balance your personal, family, and business responsibilities. A lot of CFOs I talk to, they don't really believe in work-life balance. So I'm curious how you weigh in terms of how you balance your those responsibilities. Maybe we'll start with you, John.
Yeah, sure. And first of all, Walden, I really appreciate you asking that question. I've been on a number of these panels, and no one has really cared to ask something like that. So I appreciate that. And I'm one who fully believes in finding that right work-life balance. It's personal in many respects, but I'm guessing everyone in this room, given the role you have, you're type A and you've worked hard and you made sacrifices. We all have. But I think certainly the older you get and the more advanced in your career, it's critical that you find that balance. And I know I'll just use an example. I referenced the founder of FedEx, Fred Smith, someone I admire very much as the reason I'm at FedEx. He has 10 kids. And every one of them that I've met all of them, but the ones I'm close, I've had relationships with at least 4 of them, have said he was at every major event for 10 kids growing the business he built at FedEx, and it's important to him. Family was important to him, finding that balance while he's building this great company. And I also think finding that right balance prevents burnout. It makes you a more whole individual, as well as being a benefit to your family, right? And now work is going to take the majority of the time, but family, in my view, takes the priority. Mm-hmm. So.
I completely agree on it's personal. I mean, and I get asked this question a lot because I'm female and I'm a mom. Like, how do you do it? And my answer always is, you have to define it as yourself, because what that equation for you is going to look different than from you. From you, it just looks different. But as long as you have that clearly defined and you know what your boundaries and non-negotiables are, only you can set those for yourself. Everyone will gladly try to encroach on your boundaries, but as long as you're firm in what is important to you and where those non-negotiables are. But on the point of sacrifice, I mean, to get to these chairs that we're all sitting in, they aren't 40-hour work weeks. There are trade-offs that you have to make. But for others, they don't aspire to get to, like, that aspiration part of it is a big piece of how you should be defining work-life balance. But I completely agree, it's super personal in a decision.
Well, where do you all land on flexible work? I mean, that's another thing that changed quite a lot during COVID, and I think it helps people with families, younger people like it. Are you all 3 days a week at the office, 4 or 5? Are you pushing for 5?
We're 3.
We're 3.
Everyone's 3.
Yeah, I think for us it depends on the work group. I'm guessing many of us are more than 3 in the office, even if we're allowed to be 3. One other point I wanted to make too, in terms of that balance, and I'll be quick on this, and that is that personal disposition breeds and extends down to your employees. They feel that when you take a family-first approach. If any one of my team members is having a financial hardship, what I tell them is, look, your family is first, and we'll cover you, we got your back, and that breeds into the culture. And as Peter Drucker, I believe, once said, culture eats strategy for breakfast all the time. But I think it's important. It creates a good culture when you can, convey that to your workforce as well.
Yeah.
One of the things I do, sorry, I just jumped in, that to your point on culture, I will not, if my employees are on vacation or one of my directs, I will purposely not email them, ever. Like, the world will wait for the week that they're out, or sometimes 2 weeks that they're out. But I will save them from the human nature of checking email while you're on vacation, and just really empower their teams to step up. And that has, at least for my directs and my direct team, know when they're out of the office, they can truly be out of the office. So that's one of the boundaries I help them set for themselves. I don't email them.
I like that. Well, I'm in a company that is predominantly female. I think we're 75% something, including our CEO and chair of the board. And so the work-life balance is front and center in our company. And so, and I love that, right? I think it's important. But I agree with what you said, Gina, that make no mistake, these jobs take a pound of flesh, right? And it is a choice. And in my case, I'm married. I have four boys, not 10, but 4. I thought that was a lot. And it is so much a partnership. And that is the only way my wife and I are on the same page. And the only way that we can make this work is to have that. And the honest truth, too, is I've had to, she's had to make other choices, right? I used to play golf. I don't anymore. It takes too much time, right? There are certain things that you can't, I don't believe you can have it all. You can't do everything. You got to be purposeful and choiceful. But my goodness, we have such great opportunities because we have these jobs too, right? So it does work out if you have your priorities aligned and you and the important people in your life are pulling in the same direction. If not, good luck, right?
Scott, if I could, I really like what you said about the partnership with your family members, and I'll be very quick here. I was on vacation. And my daughter's fiance, now husband, said, "Wow, this is so nice. You brought your family on this vacation." And to that point, I said, "Well, they earned it too, right?
Yeah.
We couldn't do what we do without them." And so, anyway, I just want to make that point.
Yeah.
So we're almost at time. We have a lot of expertise on the stage here. I know we have a lot of expertise in the room. Are there any questions, or do we have a microphone? I think I see. We have one here.
One here, and then there's one in the middle of the room as well. Great talk, guys. So I just want to touch on something that you said, Scott. So I was part of a large restructuring of a healthcare organization. As part of that, we had to, submit our job descriptions to the new board. Is what we did. And where the CFO, I was head of FP&A, and the CFO came to me. He said, "What should I put as my job description?" And I said, "Master of Delegation." And he thought that was a little tongue-in-cheek, but I thought that was great because I think I learned a lot being in a position where the right things were delegated to me at the right time. So my question to the entire panel is, in this age of like rapid digital transformation, where we're changing not just what we do, but how we do it, we're changing tasks and jobs and entire org structures, how are you building that delegation structure for the people that are coming up behind you so that we can have the right leaders in place?
I don't know if I'm building it with the purpose maybe that I should, but I tell you what we talk about and what I think about is if it's transformation, I try to think my job is to frame the question, but I ask my people to create the answer and build the teams that will execute it. Because for one reason, we talked about what you're good at. I'm better at visioning than I am at tactics. I usually screw it up when I try to do it, right? So that's just admitting my weakness. But also allowing them to take the ball and run with it is a way that you build leaders for tomorrow. And my personal way of thinking of it is all the good stuff happens through my team. If it went sideways, that's me. I'm responsible. I'll take that responsibility. But that also, I've found, gets people engaged if they get the recognition and see what they've done. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'll take a slightly different pivot. So as we were going through the transformation or continuing to go through the transformation, some of the hardest calls we had to make were, do we have the right leaders who can lead for the future of Hasbro? They got us to this point, but can they take us to the next? And so a lot of the people change that I've made on my team have been in my top couple layers of the organization. Because what I learned earlier in my career is if you don't have the right lieutenants, if you don't have the right change agents, trying to drive a transformation is going to feel like you're just running every day in mud. And so once kind of my job is to get my directs set, and then their job is to go and find their lieutenants. But it really started at the top of the house of getting that sorted. Sometimes you hear a lot of the transformations and people change go into the doers and the workers, kind of lower levels of the organization. I have found that is a miss because those are the folks that can be moldable. They want to be inspired. They're earlier in their career. Finding those right top leadership levels that can provide that leadership and inspiration just help you accelerate forward. So that's where we spent like the first couple of years as we were moving through this. We have spent a lot of time there. I think Hasbro overall, 70% of our vice presidents and above have either in new roles or new to the company. That's a lot in a 2-year period of time, but we focused there.
And I'll just add, to echo what you said, their willingness and ability to embrace that change, right? A lot of what was, I think, implied in your question relates to succession, some of the basic fundamentals, but they're willing, and when you're in a transformation, willingness to embrace and motivate change, not only for themselves, but for their employees.
Mm-hmm. Another question in the middle somewhere? I think last question, Walter. Okay, do we have one in the back?
Hello?
No? Go ahead.
It's like a sound. Okay.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I want to say quickly, I need to do holiday shopping for all of my nieces and nephews, so very excited to hear about Play-Doh Barbie. I'm counting on all of you. I'm curious to know how each of you have started to use AI in your own day-to-day as CFOs. What are some of the use cases that you've found where it has been really useful, and also any use cases where you've tried it out and it didn't work at all?
I guess one kind of funny, I think you guys can both, how many banker decks do you get? Like lots of banker decks, and they always usually come 5 minutes before you're going into the meeting. And they usually all start with, did you get the materials we sent? And like, well, yeah, like 2 minutes ago. Now I can leverage that, the powerful ChatGPT to, I literally will run it through, tell me what they're saying, what are they recommending, and what do I, where are my big questions? So I've used it to speed up the synthesizing of information, because there's just so much of it that comes across our plates. That's kind of I'm sure you can resonate to the 5.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's both operational issues, but from an accounting standpoint, from a billing standpoint, validating addresses and zip codes and things from as basic as that to more complex things like helping building the models. I mean, it's really run through the finance organization and all my top leaders, and will continue to accelerate. No one tells me about the ones that failed, so I don't know. But I can't say anything material other than trust but verify and going back to the governance that I talked about earlier.
Scott, you get the last word.
Yeah, I liked what you said, Gina, because I do that on internal meetings too, right? When we get the big deck and tell me summarize it and give me the top 5 questions I should ask. And sometimes I use them, sometimes I don't, but I find it helpful. Also, travel planning, I'm trying to, with my assistant, we're learning together on how to optimize. I need to be here, here, and here, and tell me it's kind of amazing what comes back, right? You can take the Acela, but it's not reliable, so if you really need to be there, you should do this. I mean, that's a real example. And, what doesn't work, I would just challenge maybe the premise of that, because you got to stay with it. And usually it doesn't work because you have bad data, you have some underlying issue, and where we've really had breakthroughs is where you have a team that just keeps plugging, right? They just keep searching because they have an inner belief that they know they can get there, and if it's not working, then okay, let's diagnose that and figure out what we've missed or what's wrong.
Unfortunately, we'll have to leave it there. Scott, Gina, John, thank you so much.
Thanks for facilitating.
Wow. Could